Welcome back. Building the simple revenue engine. We're going to cover how to go from 10 customers to 100 customers. All right, let's recap. At this point, you should have designed a beautifully specific ICP. You are probably running a smart personalized outreach. You've used your band and your mid-pick to distinguish a real deal from a polite conversation. And it's working. You've closed 3, 5, maybe 8 customers. Congratulations. Most AI products and startups never get that far. But here's what you start to notice at around deal 5 or 6. You wake up on one Monday morning and you realize you have no idea where the next month's revenue is coming from. Last month was great because of 2 warm intros. The month before was quiet because you were heads down delivering a pilot. Your pipeline looks like a heart rate monitor in spikes and flat lines. That's the signal you've outgrown your personal hustle mode. You don't need more energy. You now need a system. In this segment, we're going to map the math of your funnel. We're going to talk about why an enthusiastic user isn't a champion. And we're going to talk about how to structure a proposal that sells the problem and create a reverse timeline that changes the power dynamic. Let's get into it. There's a great framework for this from a guy called Daniel Presley. He created a framework called LAPS. Essentially, this is leads, appointments, proposals, sales. My friend Ben extended it to capture the full customer lifecycle. And I think his version is one that every AI builder should really take to heart and learn. The acronym is LAPS SIR. Essentially, this is leads, appointments, proposals, sales, upsells, renewals, and referrals. Now that might sound like a simple list, but the power is in what happens when you attach numbers to each stage. Let me walk you through an example. Say you are selling an AI-powered document review tool to mid-market legal departments. Your average contract value is roughly £30,000 per year. You need 12 customers to hit your 360K ARR target. So then how do you get there? You work backwards. From your first few months of outreach, you should roughly know that 1 in 3 proposals you send actually leads to a signed deal. That means you need 36 proposals to land 12 customers. And you also know that 1 in 2 discovery calls produces a proposal worth selling. The other half disqualify on budget, timeline, or fit. So you need roughly 72 quality appointments. And how do you get those appointments? Let's say your cold outreach currently converts at 3%. That essentially means you're going to need 2,400 targeted leads at the top of your funnel over the 12 months, or roughly 200 a month. Now you actually have a mathematical system instead of just gut feel. But here's where it gets really interesting. The most valuable insight from your funnel isn't necessarily the top line number. It is where you discover where the drop-offs happen. If your lead to appointment rate is 3%, but your proposal to close rate is 50%, you don't have a closing problem. You have an awareness problem. Conversely, if you're booking loads of calls, but barely anyone moves the proposal, your discovery call isn't surfacing the real pain. Conversely, if you're booking a lot of calls, but barely anyone moves to proposals, it's a sign that your discovery call isn't surfacing the real pain. And let's not forget the last 3. Upsells, renewals and referrals. This is where the economics of an AI business gets beautiful. Let's say your document review tool starts in the legal department, but then extends to compliance and then extends to procurement. You have just tripled the account value without a single cold email. If you retain 90% of your customers year on year, and each one refers you a new qualified lead, your pipeline starts to compound. And that's when your revenue funnel becomes a real engine funnel. Here's my advice. Start with a simple spreadsheet on row by row, column by column, update it every Friday afternoon. Within 2 to 3 months, you will know your conversion rate better than you know your model's accuracy benchmarks. And that knowledge will help you make better and better sales decisions that any gut feeling ever would. Let's focus on a key point that I've noticed throughout my founder career. And I see AI builders make this mistake every week. Let's say you run a great demo. The data scientist on the other side of the Zoom call is nodding enthusiastically. They say things like, this is exactly what I need, or I'm going to show this to my manager. You hang up and you feel 10 feet tall. You mark the deal as 70% probability in your CRM or your spreadsheet, and then nothing happens. Weeks go by. The data scientist stops replying. The deal dies silently. What happened? You had a coach, but not a champion. And the difference is everything. A coach is someone who likes you and likes your product. They will take your call. They will give you information and maybe even cheer you on. But when the procurement team pushes back, and when the CFO says, why do we even need this? Or when the IT security team raises concerns about data flow into an AI model, the coach goes quiet. Unfortunately, they don't have the authority, the organizational capital, or quite frankly, the personal incentive to fight for you. A champion is fundamentally different. They have 3 things. First, a personal stake. Maybe their bonus is tied to reducing processing time. Maybe they're leading digital transformation on the CEO's radar. Second, they have organizational authority. They are able to book time with the economic buyer and navigate procurement. Third, they are willing to sell on your behalf when you're not in the room. For AI products, this is crucial. The champion has to explain why the AI approach is worth the perceived risk. So how do you tell the difference? How do you tell the difference between a coach and a champion? You need to ask your contact, who else needs to be involved in this buying decision? If they say, just me, you need to verify it. Ask this follow-up question. What happens to your team's KPI if this project does not go ahead? If they cannot articulate a personal cost to inaction, they are a coach. Another question you can ask is, hey, can you walk me through your approval process from evaluation to final signature? A great champion will rattle off names, committees, timeline. A coach will say, I don't know, or I'll figure it out. For AI specifically, your champion needs to handle objections that would come up internally. They don't need to understand technical model architectures, but they need to be able to deal with things like data security. For example, with the answer, the model runs on our own cloud instance, and therefore no customer data leaves our environment. Or, we have tested accuracy on our data and it hits 94% accuracy. Give them these points. Write them a 1-pager internal brief. One more thing to bear in mind. In mid-market companies or enterprise deals, you often need more than one champion. People change roles or get pulled into other projects. I've had a situation where my primary champion got diverted mid-deal, but because I had already built relationships with 2 other directors, the deal survived. So identify your champion, then ask, who is the backup champion? So it's important to identify your champion and then go a step further and ask, who's the backup champion? Once you identify your champion, you need to arm them with something powerful enough to get the budget approved. And this is what most AI builders get horribly wrong. They send a proposal that reads like a product spec. For example, they can say, our platform uses fine-tuned language models with retrieval augmented generation to process unstructured documents with 97% accuracy. That's lovely. The CFO does not have any idea what that means and why they should care. In AI, you are often selling to buyers who don't fully understand the problem you're solving, or don't yet believe that AI can solve it reliably. The second one is particularly important. They might understand the problem. It might be a big problem, but they might have significant skepticism that AI can solve it reliably. That means your proposal can't assume that the buyer is already AI educated. The structure that works beautifully for this is the as is and to be proposal. On one side, you paint the painful reality, the as is state. On the other, you paint the future, the to be state. And in between, you quantify the cost of doing nothing. Let me make this concrete. Let's say you are selling an AI document review tool to a mid-market insurance company. The as-is state is the claims team reviews 400 documents a week manually. Each review takes a senior analyst 45 minutes at a fully loaded cost of £50 an hour. That's £15,000 a week. The error rates run at 8%, triggering rework, complaints, and regulatory penalties. The team is short-staffed and struggling to hire. And here's the to-be state for that specific example. With our AI tool handling the first pass review, 70% of the documents are processed automatically with a 2% error rate. Analysts can now spend their time on the 30% of the complex case that genuinely require human judgment. The company then saves roughly $500,000 a year in direct labor costs, reduce error penalties, and stops losing senior analysts to burnout. Now, the cost of your solution, let's say is $80,000 a year, looks like a no-brainer against the $500,000 a year that they're saving. But the kicker is the cost of doing nothing. If they don't act, they keep spending $780K on manual review, they keep losing staff, and the backlog keeps growing. You're not asking the CFO to take a risk on AI. You're showing them that not acting is a bigger risk. For AI products, your proposal must also address the concerns that keep buyers awake. That is, accuracy, hallucination risk, data privacy, integration complexity, and what happens when your model gets something wrong. Address them head on with data from your pilot. A proposal that acknowledges risk and mitigates them is 10 times more credible than one that pretends that risks don't exist. The last piece of the revenue engine is one of the most elegant moves in B2B sales, and almost nobody in AI uses it. It is called the reverse timeline, or sometimes called a mutual success plan. Here's the idea. Instead of chasing a customer with any update on this contract, you flip the dynamic. You say to them, when do you want this live? They say to you, we want this live at the start of Q3. And you say, great, let's work backwards from that date and figure out what needs to happen by when for both of us. So you build a shared document called a simple timeline. You start with the go live. Let's say the go live date is July. You then work backwards from that. Onboarding and integration testing starts in June. The contract needs to be signed by mid-May. The legal review needs to begin at late April. The economic buyer needs to approve by mid-April. The executive presentation needs to start at early April, all the way back to today. Why is this so powerful? First, it reframes the conversation from when are you going to buy to when do you need to achieve your goal? You are no longer the salesperson pushing for a signature. You are the partner helping them hit their deadline. Second, it surfaces hidden blockers early. When the customer says, hey, our legal team needs 6 weeks to review for vendor reviews, you've gained critical information that would have blindsided you later. Third, and my personal favorite, it creates genuine urgency. Not fake scarcity, real consequence. If the customer needs your technology to go live by July 1st, but doesn't sign until June, they will miss their own deadline. And the urgency comes from their own business objectives, not your quota. For AI developments, the reverse timeline is especially useful because it forces both sides to plan for steps that are unique to AI. That is, data access and preparation, model testing on real data, accuracy validation, security review, and in some cases, user training. These aren't trivial. If you don't plan for them, they will become reasons why deals slip from Q1 to Q3 to maybe next year. Time kills deals. The reverse timeline puts them on the calendar where they belong. Now let's bring it all together. Now you've got Lapser, which gives you tunnel visibility. You should know exactly how many leads, appointments, proposal you need, and where the drop-offs are. You understand the difference between a coach and a champion. You've hopefully moved past feature pitches to a much better pitch of as is versus to be business cases that quantify the cost of inaction. And hopefully you've got a reverse timeline that turns deal conversations from please buy our solution to let's help you hit your deadline together. This is the simple revenue engine. It's not that complicated, but it is disciplined. It's the difference between closing deals when you get lucky and knowing with reasonable confidence what your revenue will look like 90 days from now. In the next and final segment of this module, we're going to talk about what happens after the revenue engine is running and how to build a team that takes over from you, how to transition from doing all the selling yourself to a scalable go-to-market motion, and the signals that tell you that maybe it's time for you personally to stop selling and for you to start leading the people and hiring the people who will do the selling for you. Let's get to it.